So the concept check for section 1.4, hopefully you thought about some of these questions. This could be potentially a good question for the test, like a short answer essay kind of question, so make sure you think about that a little bit. But true or false, all microbes cause disease. So false for that, because we said that only about 2,000 microbes cause disease that have been identified. That could change, but not all microbes cause disease. Some, like some paramecium or other microorganisms that are photosynthetic, they don't need us for food, so they don't cause disease. So why is there a difference between the top 10 causes of death in the United States versus worldwide? Well, I think there's pockets of places in the United States that are kind of like a lower income country, a middle income, and then there's upper income parts of the United States. So, but overall, we have a lot more than other countries, and we have clean, pure water that a lot of we take it for granted that we have clean food, clean water available to us, where other countries do not. And so worldwide, I mean, I guess it depends on what part of the world you're talking about, but just overall worldwide, there are a lot more infectious diseases on the top 10 list of causes of death than compared to the United States. So three connections between disease considered to be non-infectious and a microbe. So what we used to think, like Helicobacter pylori was a disease that we used to think was caused by just being stressed, and now we understand it causes ulcers. Helicobacter pylori causes ulcers, not stress, but stress probably exasperates it. Multiple sclerosis, diabetes, obesity, all of these have had some connections to, and they used to be considered non-infectious, and now we understand that there's an infectious part to it. And again, we talked about in class that this is a correlation, doesn't necessarily mean it's a causation. It could be that there is some link because it like triggers something to begin, but it's not necessarily the huge cause. But anyway, be careful about those connections. And so note that they said connection, not cause, between diseases considered non-infectious, and now we understand that there's a microbe connected to that disease. So section 5, we're going to look at the general characteristics of microorganisms. So there's just a few things we want to talk about: the difference between bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotic microorganisms, and just a really general thing right now because we're going to talk more in detail about these in Unit 2. And then identify 2 types of acellular microorganisms, and then compare and contrast the relative sizes of different microorganisms. So the bacteria and archaea cells, they are about 10 times smaller, and they lack organelles. Those are the 2 big things. So they're about 10 times smaller, and they lack these organelles, membrane, we should say membrane bound organelles, not necessarily organelles in general, because they have ribosomes, and that's an organelle, but it's not membrane bound. And so the majority of microorganisms are single-celled, and all of the bacteria and archaea and some eukaryotes are single-celled. The big difference between eukaryotes and archaea and bacteria cells would be the size and the lack of membrane-bound organelles. So you can see like a helminth here is there's a scolex, the head of a tiniosolium, which is a pork tapeworm. There's a fungus here, protozoans like this Vorticella, which is really cool, bacteria, viruses, and then prions, which you really can't see it as much as the effects of the prion. You're not really looking at the prions here, you're looking at the tangles, the masses resulting from the prions. So the lifestyles, the majority of these live in soil and water, and a lot of them are harmless. Like I said, paramecium, you could just drink paramecium, food, water with paramecium in it, and it wouldn't really harm you. And some microbes are actually very beneficial. They're in our microbiota and they provide things for us. They derive their food and other factors from non-living environment, like the sunlight is their energy source. And so a lot of them are really not harmful to us because they don't need us. But there are this group, the parasites. And the parasites, they're parasitic. It's a win-lose kind of thing. The parasite wins and the host will lose in this relationship, and the host harbors and nourishes the parasite, and it causes damage and disease in the host. So parasites are pathogens. So the parasitic organisms have this, are pathogens, or pathogens are in a parasitic relationship with us. So this was a very short little section. In terms of size, how are eukaryotes different from archaea? And we said we'll go over those answers in a minute. Why are helminths, worms, considered to a study of microbiology? So pause and then answer those questions and then see if you can, we'll come back and talk about it. All right, so in terms of size, how are eukaryotes different from bacteria and archaea? Eukaryotes are 10 times bigger than the bacteria and the archaea. And why are helminths considered the study for microbiology, even though they're multicellular and they're huge compared to bacteria and viruses? They are considered a microbe because they're transmitted, they're communicable. You can eat or drink foods that have usually at the microscopic portion, which is the egg, where you could come in contact with a larva, and in food or in drink, and that as a result then can cause disease. So that's why we consider them part of microbiology.